What is the ultimate supernatural power of the Buddha? Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Are the miraculous or supernatural powers of the Buddha real? According to Buddhism, anything can happen through the process of science and karma. The mental powers can create miraculous feats or phenomena that are difficult to explain using ordinary knowledge of laypeople like us, who are still filled with ignorance and defilements. It is true that in the scriptures, there are accounts of some miraculous and supernatural powers that the Buddha demonstrated a few times to subdue the morality of overly aggressive non-believers. However, Buddha never spoke much about these powers, nor taught them as essential doctrine. Some other stories about the Buddha's supernatural abilities might have been somewhat exaggerated by ancient monks out of deep reverence for the Buddha, or to create an elevated image of him to rival the mystical legends of other theistic religions of that ancient time. Buddhism does not encourage the glorification or blind belief in miracles, magic, or an image of a Buddha full of mystical powers and sorcery. The Buddha did not advocate magic or supernatural abilities as a form of spiritual practice. In fact, if someone weak, without any martial skills or supernatural abilities, becomes a pure practitioner and attains enlightenment, that is the true miracle to admire. In many other religions, we often hear about miracles performed by their founders or disciples. In the case of the Buddha, some of his demonstrations from birth, and the rare occasions when he used powers to persuade certain extremists, are considered supernatural abilities. In other religions or sects, these powers would be called miracles. However, the Buddha attained these abilities through meditation. Buddha practiced and succeeded in reaching the highest levels of meditation, allowing the mind to achieve its highest peak, where he attained nirvana. Powers such as flying in the air, transforming into multiple bodies, reading the minds of others, or passing through walls are abilities that ordinary people cannot achieve. The Buddha also taught that these abilities can be attained by anyone through the process of meditation. Therefore, if one understands that these powers come through meditation, they will not be surprised or call them miracles. In summary, supernatural abilities are extraordinary capacities that exceed normal human limitations when a person's mind is properly trained through meditation and reaches profound depth. When a person named Kata came to meet the Buddha and said that the people in the prosperous region of Nalanda had faith in the Buddha, he requested the Buddha to send a disciple to demonstrate some supernatural powers to increase the people's faith even more. The Buddha responded, "Katha, I have never taught the monastic code to the monks for the purpose of doing such things." Even though the man requested for a third time, Buddha still refused. Afterward, the Buddha explained to him about 3 types of supernatural powers, with the following essence. The first type of supernatural power involves extraordinary abilities such as duplicating oneself or transforming into multiple bodies, passing through walls, flying in the air, or walking on water. Abilities that ordinary people cannot possess. The second type of supernatural power involves reading the minds of others. The third type of supernatural power is the ability to guide and enlighten others, to help them progress through practice and meditation, and to teach different methods suited to different individuals for their spiritual growth. The Buddha stated that if a monk or disciple were to demonstrate the first 2 types of supernatural powers to impress or win over an audience, it would be no different from magicians or sorcerers performing tricks. He went on to say that those who practice these worldly powers bring shame and dishonor upon themselves, because such displays are merely for conquest or attraction, and do nothing to address the suffering of life. The third type of supernatural power, which the Buddha called the guiding power, is the ability to help others eliminate the suffering of existence. This power was praised by the Buddha as the most noble and useful, because only those methods that help people eliminate and escape worldly suffering are truly valuable to humans, especially to someone like the Buddha, who was striving to save all sentient beings at the time. Another example illustrating the Buddha's view on supernatural powers is a story where the Buddha was crossing a river and met an ascetic who had practiced austerities for 25 years. The Buddha asked him what he had gained from such difficult practice. The man replied that after all those years of austere practice, could now walk on water to cross the river. The Buddha then remarked that the man had wasted his life on something useless. For one could cross the river by simply paying a penny for a boat ride, instead of spending 25 years of one's short life on such an effort. Upon hearing this story, one might smile or find it amusing. In the past, when people believed in gods and magic, if someone saw a person walking on water, they would likely be very impressed and might ask to become that person's disciple for life. But the Buddha viewed this ability as worth no more than a penny. The Buddha also advised people not to believe in anyone simply because of their abilities or words, or just because that person is their teacher. Even the teacher's words and moral character should be carefully examined. Thus, the Buddha did not regard supernatural abilities as something of value to conquer or make others believe in him. This was made very clear in the famous Kalama Sutta. In general, a person might be able to develop extraordinary supernatural abilities through practice, without gaining any wisdom, similar to martial artists who only gain physical strength. The Buddha taught that the correct way is first to cultivate spiritual strength by nurturing the mind, and only then will it be easier to develop supernatural powers. If done the other way around, it is very dangerous because of human nature. If one does not cultivate the mind and nurture their character, the inherent arrogance and ego can easily lead to the abuse of physical powers to conquer others or to pursue selfish, unethical goals. Similar to people without morality who learn advanced martial arts only to engage in wrongful and violent acts. Dear friends, the supernatural powers of the Buddha have long been a topic of great interest, attracting many readers over time. Numerous articles have addressed this issue, with the common point being the affirmation that the Buddha focused primarily on the supernatural power of teaching and guiding others. This is true, but it is not entirely complete. When we carefully read some sutras that mention the various types of supernatural powers and the times the Buddha used them, there are still many aspects related to these powers that have not been fully explored. In the following content, we will delve into how the Buddha applied supernatural powers. It's recorded in the Nikaya Canon. The Buddha, as well as his disciples, attained supernatural powers as described in the scriptures. The three types of supernatural powers frequently mentioned in the Buddha's teachings are the powers of transformation, mind reading, and teaching. The Buddha further explained these three powers as follows. 1. Transformation. Supernatural power. This power involves performing strange and extraordinary feats, such as transforming one body into many or many bodies into one, changing appearances, passing through walls, mountains, and the earth as if moving through empty space, diving into the ground and emerging again, walking on water as if on land, sitting cross-legged in midair like a bird, touching the sun and moon with one's hand. These are mighty and awe-inspiring feats. One can even fly to the Brahma realm by their own power. These miraculous feats attract a vast number of people, especially those who are absorbed in worldly pleasures and curiosity, as they admire and are fascinated by such strange and extraordinary demonstrations, treating them as mere worldly entertainment. And 2. Mind reading, supernatural power. This ability involves understanding and revealing the thoughts of others. Practitioner can say, "Your thoughts are this, your thoughts are that, your mind is like this." According to the sutras, this ability can manifest in various ways. Some people have the capacity to observe the physical features of others and discern their thoughts. Others may possess a special ability to hear the voices of humans, non-humans, and celestial beings, or receive their messages, then reflect on and express what they hear. Some attain this power through the practice of specific meditations, achieving concentration without thought or inquiry, allowing their mind to clearly perceive the minds of others. Depending on where a noble practitioner directs their focus, their mind will immediately understand the situation at hand. As a result, they can know and reveal the thoughts of others. The power of mind reading often commands respect and admiration from others, as if the practitioner can read mind. However, this power carries hidden dangers that are hard to foresee and offers only limited benefits. 3. Teaching supernatural power. This power involves skillfully using teachings to guide others to abandon negative thoughts, words, and actions, and return to a path of virtue, leading to peace and happiness in life. The scriptures describe this power as using the correct teachings to advise, "You should think in this way, not that way." This supernatural power is the most valuable as it helps people eliminate suffering and attain happiness through wise guidance. In summary, while the Buddha acknowledged the existence of supernatural powers, he emphasized that the highest and most noble use of such powers is to guide others toward a better life, free from suffering. Focus your mind in this way, not in that way. Let go of this and reach for that. The teaching of supernatural power can be described as a special ability that helps a person abandon negative actions, speech, and thoughts, and instead nurture goodness through the three means: body, speech, and mind. It is about choosing the upward path that leads to true and lasting happiness in the present and future. The teaching supernatural power uses the energy of education to help transform an individual's body and mind in a positive direction, creating a remarkable change in the person, as if by magic. The Buddha's attitude towards supernatural powers. Human psychology is often curious and attracted to strange, unusual, and extraordinary things because people are so accustomed to normal life. Anything out of the ordinary captures their attention. As a result, most people admire those who possess the ability to perform supernatural feats. They believe such abilities come from extraordinary individuals. These miraculous displays, like illusions and magic, a powerful, irresistible allure. Not only lay people are drawn to these displays of supernatural powers, but even some monks during the Buddha's time, such as the monk Sunak, became discontent and abandoned monastic life, turning to lay life because he criticized the Buddha for not displaying supernatural powers. In reality, the Buddha fully attained all kinds of supernatural powers, but he was very limited in his use of them as a way to perform special feats, especially to satisfy the curiosity of the masses, because he saw that this brought no real practical benefit. In situations where it was necessary, Buddha would still use supernatural powers, very sparingly and cautiously. In the Angulimala Nikaya, Chapter 2, the Buddha is described as disappearing from Jeta's grove and reappearing at the eastern park at the request of the Devas, as easily as a strong man stretches out or contracts his arm. On another occasion, when the Buddha was on his way to Kusinara, he arrived at the Ganges River, which was overflowing. People were looking for boats, rafts, or logs to cross to the other side. The Buddha, as swiftly as a strong man flexing and extending his arm, disappeared from one bank and reappeared on the other bank along with the assembly of monks. Digha Nikaya, Sutta 16, Mahaparinibbana Sutta. In situations where the Buddha's presence was urgently required at a faraway location that could not be reached through ordinary travel, he did not hesitate to use supernatural powers as a means. For the Buddha, it was as ordinary and simple as us using transportation to meet our needs. When the distance is short, we walk. For longer distances, we take a motorbike. And for even farther distances, we use cars or airplanes. Not only the Buddha, but also his disciples, under his direct guidance, refrained from abusing supernatural powers. There was an instance where the Sangha went to a layperson's house for a meal, invited by the householder. That day, the weather was extremely hot, and the monks were sweating profusely, their bodies drenched as if they were melting. At that moment, a young monk who had not been ordained for long used his supernatural powers to create a cool breeze, causing a storm to rise, and rain began to fall, bringing a pleasant coolness. The young monk then addressed the elder monk in the assembly, saying, "Is that sufficient, venerable elder?" The elder monk confirmed, "Yes, that is enough." The householder, impressed by the supernatural powers of the monk, felt deep gratitude. Mahakassapa, on returning to the monastery, was once again requested to display his supernatural powers for the householder. The monk Mahakassapa instructed them to place a bundle of straw on a monk's upper robe in the corridor. He then entered the monastery, locked the door, and performed his supernatural powers, causing flames to shoot out from the keyhole and through the cracks in the door, burning the straw but not the upper robe. The householder, stunned and frightened, touched the untouched robe, his hair standing on end. Mahakassapa came out of the monastery and said to the householder, That is enough. This is sufficient. This display of supernatural power was deemed necessary in this case because the extreme heat caused discomfort, making it difficult for the monks to maintain serenity while having their meal at the householder's home. In such instances, the monks could use their powers to bring about a cool, pleasant environment for the community. In another case, when the householder requested proof of spiritual attainment to strengthen faith in the 3 jewels for newcomers, the Buddha allowed the monks to display their supernatural abilities. However, those performing such powers never dwelled on them, stopping once they had demonstrated enough. After all, the outcome of a practitioner's spiritual progress is not merely their ability to display supernatural powers. The Buddha subtly conveyed the message to his disciples that such powers were merely tools to create the best environment and most comfortable mindset for the monks, practice and guide others in the Dharma. The Buddha's perspective was always consistent. Supernatural powers should only be used when truly necessary, and solely to serve the purpose of spreading the Dharma. The Buddha never used these powers to entice or attract. In his mission to transform others through education, the Buddha chose a unique method, as recorded in the Digha Nikaya, Sutta 11, where Kata requested the Buddha to teach a monk to perform supernatural feats to win over the people of Nalanda. The Buddha refused and taught that among the 3 types of supernatural powers, supernatural feats, mind reading, and teaching, the only one he chose was teaching supernatural power. This means that the Buddha solely used the power of education to transform people. During the process of teaching and guiding others, in some necessary situations, the Buddha would use the other types of supernatural powers as supportive means to make the process more effective. The powers of transformation and mind reading were the result of practicing and applying the Dharma, which is why the Buddha used the word attainment when referring to these powers. However, these powers are not the ultimate goal of liberation, so one should not become attached to these attainments, as they could become obstacles on the path to enlightenment. Moreover, having such extraordinary abilities does not justify their casual use for lesser purposes. This passage serves as a warning to the Buddha's ordained disciples not to use any forms of tricks or displays to attract the masses, simply for the sake of numbers. The task of a monk is to kindle the virtuous minds of those studying and practicing the Dharma, meeting the needs of those seeking to learn and apply the teachings. It is not to use methods that deviate from the righteous path to draw large crowds for personal gain. Without mindfulness and self-reminder, teachers of the Dharma could easily stray and become entangled in the cycle of fame and profit, and surrounded by the respect and material offerings of the public, thus drifting away from the path of practicing and guiding the pure and virtuous life. There were situations where the Buddha temporarily used supernatural powers for a period of time with unenlightened beings who were still lost in delusion, but this was merely a means to guide them towards practicing the Dharma. The story of Sundarananda, a half-brother of the Buddha, shows us how the Buddha used supernatural powers to take Nanda to observe the heavenly realms, where he could see the beautiful celestial maidens. Nanda compared their beauty with that of his newlywed wife. The Buddha then promised Nanda that he could marry 500 beautiful celestial maidens after practicing the holy life and attaining the fruits of the path. Ultimately, during the practice, Nanda experienced the supreme happiness of the liberated life, detached and free in his monastic practice. Nanda eventually went to the Buddha to renounce the previous promise. Here, the Buddha used supernatural powers to entice Nanda to engage with the Dharma, but it was merely an excuse to create the conditions for Nanda to practice the teachings and experience the joy of liberation, which was the Buddha's true purpose. Thus, using supernatural powers made it easier to approach certain individuals. The Buddha often used various types of supernatural powers as a supportive means to make his teaching more effective and accessible. The way he used transformation and mind-reading supernatural powers in special cases, as presented here, helps us understand this better. In certain situations, he used supernatural powers to easily approach those who needed guidance. A clear example is the case of the Buddha converting the robber Angulimala. When necessary, the Buddha revealed all 32 marks of a great man to win over a group of Brahmins and non-Buddhists, leading them to reverently accept his teachings of liberation. Let us examine more closely the case of the Buddha converting the robber Angulimala, which is one of the rare occasions where the Buddha used supernatural powers to approach this ferocious bandit. The Buddha's choice to use supernatural powers was the most appropriate means to quickly approach Angulimala, while also asserting his authority. The Buddha's extraordinary display first piqued Angulimala's curiosity and admiration, which allowed the Buddha the opportunity to engage in a dialogue with him. The transformation powers of the Buddha helped change the robber's behavior. Angulimala acted entirely differently toward the Buddha, unlike with anyone else he had encountered before, whom he would have killed without emotion, severing their fingers to make garlands before moving on to find his next victim. To approach such a cold-blooded killer, using supernatural powers was absolutely necessary and appropriate. However, the Buddha used these powers very sparingly, merely as a means to support the process of transforming and guiding others, without any abuse. The ultimate goal of the Buddha was to bring Angulimala out of his life of delusion, violence, and wrongful beliefs, and place him on the path of practicing the righteous Dharma. The Buddha skillfully sent a powerful message to Angulimala with the words, "I have long since stopped, but you have not yet stopped." The Buddha succeeded in giving medicine to a severely ill person by first offering candy and then giving the medicine afterward. Before displaying supernatural powers to satisfy the curiosity of the robber Angulimala, the Buddha used his compassion and wisdom to subdue him. Looking at the entire process of transformation, we can see that, thanks to the Buddha's timely and insightful words, a bloodthirsty bandit became a model monk within the Sangha. What else could this be, if not a demonstration of the Buddha's teaching supernatural power? Throughout his life, the Buddha guided sentient beings with the purpose of helping them transform from delusion to enlightenment. He focused primarily on the teaching supernatural power, while he considered the powers of transformation and mind reading to be potentially dangerous and harmful, leading to many dangers if misused. However, combined and used at the right time, with moderation, these supernatural abilities could effectively support the teaching process, helping people to open their minds. The Buddha was very successful in doing this. He used supernatural powers to understand the thoughts and intentions of others, to teach them better. The Buddha rarely used supernatural powers, but in some contexts, the scriptures mention that he used mind reading, understand the thoughts of a young Brahmin named Kathika. The Buddha did not use supernatural powers for show or display, rather as tools to support the teaching supernatural power, which he frequently employed. Before going on alms rounds, the Buddha would use mind reading to contemplate the karmic connections of beings and decide which people to reach out to that day. This allowed him to use his time most effectively, giving those with a connection to the Dharma a precious opportunity to meet him and be fully transformed. The scriptures recount many instances where, right after being enlightened by the Buddha, individuals immediately took refuge in the Three Jewels and passed away soon after. For example, the story of a sick boy who was laid on the street by his father, was fortunate enough to meet the Buddha, develop faith in the Three Jewels, and pass away in peace shortly after. Or the case of a monk recently ordained by the Buddha, who was gored to death by a bull. These are just a few examples of the benefits gained through the Buddha's use of mind reading during the teaching process, helping many people to overcome suffering and live happy lives. In many cases, to make the teaching more effective and avoid wasting time or unnecessary effort in travel, the Buddha used both transformation and mind-reading powers to ensure the best results. The scriptures also recount how the Buddha once used mind-reading to realize several disciples were at fault. Instead of sending someone to call the disciples who were meditating alone in various distant places, wasting time and effort for the messenger, the Buddha thought, "I shall display my supernatural power to summon the monks with guilty minds to come to me in pairs or small groups." Thus, he used supernatural powers to gather the monks so he could correct and teach them, giving him more time to help even more people. The Buddha used supernatural powers to promptly uplift and instruct his disciples. In most situations, he read the thoughts of his disciples using mind reading, then used that ability to engage in dialogue with them, confirm their thoughts, or guide them in a timely manner. Practicing the Dharma with infinite compassion, the Buddha always arrived in time to offer support and guidance to his disciples who had lost faith and direction in their practice, the righteous path. And sensing the need for help from his disciples, as a true spiritual guide, the Buddha never missed an opportunity to provide assistance as quickly as possible to help them solve their problems. However, the purpose of using supernatural powers was to be present when needed. And once the Buddha had reached the individual, he would use his wisdom to explain the situation and guide them through their difficulties or adjust their practice to yield better results. An example of this is the story of Venerable Kalapantaka, who was a slow learner and was harshly criticized and sent home by his older brother, Venerable Mahapantaka, to live as a layperson because he couldn't memorize any verses or suttas despite his deep respect for the Buddha's teaching. Feeling lost, confused, and disheartened, the Buddha, using his mind-reading power, understood Kalapantaka's state of mind and used supernatural powers to meet him. The Buddha consoled, encouraged, and guided him in a method of practice suited to him. As a result, Kalapantaka attained liberation. Following this event, the Buddha delivered the Dhammapada verse 25. The wise, restrained by mindfulness, build themselves an island that no flood can overwhelm. This event is recorded in the stories of the elder monks and the Dhammapada commentary on verses 557 to 558, where Kalapantaka spoke after attaining enlightenment. Another story is that of Venerable Sona, who, overwhelmed by afflictions and lacking mindfulness, considered returning to lay life to perform good deeds and enjoy the happiness of a householder. Using his mind-reading power, the Buddha knew Sona's thoughts and immediately appeared before him, asking about his recent contemplation. Sona confessed that he was thinking of abandoning the practice. The Buddha then inquired about Sona's experience playing the lute, which he was skilled at before becoming a monk, using this as an analogy to encourage him to continue practicing with balance, neither too intense nor too lax, to make progress in the practice. Thanks to the Buddha's timely intervention, Sona overcame his discouragement and diligently practiced until he attained liberation. The Buddha used mind reading and supernatural powers as tools, applied at the right time, promptly helped Sona overcome his dejection and avoid regression when he had not yet found an effective method of practice. The Buddha also used supernatural powers to remind his disciples during their practice. When necessary, to offer timely guidance, the Buddha would use his powers to reach the disciple as quickly as possible, understanding the importance of time when the disciple was under pressure and unable to find a solution. Venerable Moggallana once recounted to his fellow monks a conversation with the Buddha when the Buddha was in Savatthi and Moggallana was in Rajagaha, a distance of approximately 650 kilometers. When the monks asked if Moggallana had traveled to meet the Buddha using supernatural powers, or if the Buddha had come to Moggallana by such means, Moggallana replied that both the Buddha and he used supernatural powers to be near each other geographically. With their pure divine vision and divine hearing, they were able to connect. When the Buddha taught Moggallana, he could grasp the teaching fully without needing to travel physically to the Buddha's location. On another occasion, Venerable Moggallana shared with his fellow monks that the Buddha, using supernatural powers, approached him and said, "Moggallana, do not be heedless in the first jhana. Focus your mind on the first jhana. Direct your mind to the first jhana." Thanks to this, Venerable Moggallana was able to regain mindfulness and return to his meditation object, continuing his diligent practice. Although supernatural powers are extraordinary abilities and the result of spiritual attainment, they require practice and spiritual achievement. However, the way the Buddha used these powers in necessary and appropriate situations serves as a reminder to his disciples not to get caught up in these extraordinary displays. This is because these powers are not the ultimate goal of those who practice the right path. They are merely beautiful sights along the way, something we can enjoy but should pass by, not stopping before reaching the final destination. When used for educational purposes, these special abilities can greatly support the learning process, making it more effective and saving time and energy for both the learner and the teacher. However, if these powers are seen as the ultimate goal of spiritual practice and used to impress others, or if they are displayed out of a desire to be admired or praised, or if supernatural powers are viewed as the sole manifestation of spiritual attainment, leading to excessive offerings and reverence for that individual, then the value of those powers is diminished. One confirmation of this issue is when Devadatta harbored the desire to lead the Sangha. With that desire arising, Devadatta's supernatural powers faded. The Buddha was able to timely resolve his disciples' doubts about their practice through the support of mind reading and transformation powers. If there had been delays in moving from one place to another, or if he had overlooked the need to read his disciples' minds, many would have lost the opportunity to open their minds and practice the Dharma to progress on the path to liberation. The teaching supernatural power is far superior to the transformation and mind-reading powers that people admire and hold as extraordinary abilities worthy of praise. When referred to as higher human abilities, people often see them as signs of spiritual attainment. Some even complain to the Buddha, saying that in the past there were fewer monks, but many more of them demonstrated higher human abilities and supernatural power. Nowadays, there are more monks, but fewer display these abilities. However, the Buddha affirmed that of the 3 types of supernatural powers mentioned, he only accepted the third one, teaching supernatural power. This power is what leads people from delusion to enlightenment, from suffering to peace, and from the cycle of birth and death to nirvana. It is far more valuable, wondrous, and miraculous than the others. Not only the Buddha, but also knowledgeable Brahmins agreed that teaching supernatural power is the most superior and wonderful of all powers. The Buddha, his sermons contained elements of supernatural power because they had supreme and miraculous capability. On this basis, the Buddha encouraged us to offer the Dharma to each other as the highest form of generosity in life. With clear explanations delivered in a gentle, harmonious manner, the Buddha transformed countless non-believers, guiding them to take refuge in him and ordain, living a life of purity. Many non-believers who were once hostile and prejudiced toward the Buddha became respectful and obedient after meeting and hearing him teach. Some people experience such strong emotions that their hair stands on end. In many discourses, such as the Fruits of the Contemplative Life, Samannaphalasutta, number 2, in the Digha Nikaya, it is recorded that the special abilities of the Buddha were praised by everyone, even non-believers. The Buddha was described as someone who stands upright what was thrown down, reveals what was hidden, shows the way to the lost, and brings light to those in darkness, so that those with eyes can see. This is the marvelous power of teaching supernatural power. By explaining the Dharma in a reasonable and appropriate way, and choosing effective methods with great compassion, the Buddha helped many people undergo a powerful and complete transformation of mind, becoming pure and good, entirely different from who they were moments before. What is this if not supernatural power? Here are a few examples among countless stories of the miraculous teaching supernatural power. The Buddha's teachings turned a wicked person like Angulimala into a noble saint within the Sangha. In another case, a woman named Patachara lost her dearest loved ones, parents, husband, brother, and 2 children. She went mad. The Buddha comforted her, and she learned how to face her suffering by understanding the nature of life. After hearing the Buddha's teachings, she immediately attained the stage of stream entry and requested to ordain. After a short time of diligent practice, Bhikkhuni Patachara attained the fruit of arahantship, becoming one of the foremost nuns during the Buddha's time. From her personal experience, she composed verses 112 to 121 in the Therigatha to encourage her disciples. In another story, the Buddha performed the miracle of easing the burden of sorrow weighing heavily on the heart of a mother whose small child had just passed away. The Buddha opened her mind, allowing her to let go of the pain caused by her child's death. He asked her, "Ubiri, all 84,000 girls named Jiva have been burned at this charnel ground. Are you grieving for just one? Reflecting on this, Ubiri understood the laws of impermanence and samsara and overcame her sorrow. This is truly the miracle of teaching supernatural power. Using mind reading and transformation powers is not inherently wrong. However, the benefits of these powers are limited, only directly benefiting a few individuals. Worse, if supernatural powers are used merely for display and to gain admiration or praise from others, feeding the ego, this would go against the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha's principle was to expand the model of a virtuous and ethical life in society. Thus, the core of those who spread the Dharma should be to use all means, including supernatural powers, to guide those with the right conditions, live a happy life. These people are the true heirs of the Dharma. Those who practice according to the true Dharma gradually reduce greed and attachment, while gaining more peace and happiness. They should not become entangled in the miracles of transformation or seek superficial praise. The Buddha affirmed that these things are like the outer bark and leaves of a tree, not worth being content with. Only the attainment of liberation and the pure life is the true, solid core of the tree, worthy of being cherished and preserved. The way the Buddha used supernatural powers once again affirms the central role of educating people in his entire body of teachings. The Buddha was clear that mind reading and transformation powers were only supporting tools for teaching. He skillfully applied educational methods and techniques to help people transform their minds and change fundamentally from their core understanding. This was the Buddha's ultimate purpose. The use of supernatural powers was a skillful means aimed at enlightening people to the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, ultimate happiness of peace when all suffering is ended, and the methods to practice in order to achieve that happiness in daily life. Today, everything we do, including any special abilities, should be directed toward the practice of transforming bad into good, madness into calm, ignorance into wisdom, and suffering into happiness. This is the true practice of the Dharma. The view that teaching is a form of supernatural power is one that the Buddha dedicated his life to demonstrating. By following his example, we can avoid going astray or wandering too far from the true path of the Dharma and the Buddha's mission to spread the teaching. We must clearly understand what the goal is and what the means are, maintain confidence on the path of practicing and spreading the Dharma. As disciples of the Buddha, we must be steadfast in knowing that all means should be used for the sole purpose of transforming human minds. With this spirit, generations of teachers have tirelessly used the teaching's supernatural power to light the flame of the Buddha's teachings in the world and rekindle the spiritual source for so many. It is through the miraculous power of teaching that we, even though 26 centuries removed from the Buddha, continue to benefit from his teachings. It is the miraculous supernatural power of teaching that has allowed the Dharma to spread far and wide through space and time, from then until now, and forever into the future.